Hello my friends, welcome back. We are just about to unclamp our spice rack and see how everything is, and we're going to finish up the sanding and scraping of the outside along with taking out some of the glue, and we're going to put our first coat of boiled linseed oil on today. Now I'm using boiled linseed oil first because I want to make sure I take out the full color of the walnut. If all I did was put shellac on, it could mute it a little bit. It'll still be nicer and cleaner and brighter than it is here, but the boiled linseed oil, in my opinion, makes walnut look amazing. So we need to put that on today, and then we're gonna let it sit for 3 days to let that cure before I put the shellac on. So I don't know what the order, how far ahead I am on the videos yet. I still have a few that I'm not sure how many I have, but hopefully I'll still be able to put these in sequential order, so the next day and next day. But we're getting to the end. So make sure you subscribe to my videos. I appreciate that from everybody who has been doing that. And also, but more importantly, make sure you leave a comment, because I would like to give this away to somebody who wants it. And remember, every video you comment in gets you 1 entry for the spice rack. So let's get started, all right? So as you can see, my little porcupine has to be taken apart. Eventually I'm going to get a rack for these. I'll probably just replace these in general, but but actually for this setting, because they're I'm having to go around clamps, that's actually what these are meant for. Probably should get some shorter ones or cut these down, because I don't really ever need anything this long, but at least not after I built my workbench. And this has cured overnight, or the glue is set overnight. No point rushing it. And getting mistakes done. You rush it and you pop a joint loose, it's really hard to fix. So better just let it wait. Okay. So this is what we have so far. Looks good. My little tape clamps just come off. Now right now it's all gray and dingy, and that's what the boiled linseed oil will do. Oh no. Oh, that's terrible. Oh, wait a second. Huh. Okay, so I want to show you something. this here looks like it's off center, and that's probably because I put this, it's an optical illusion with this white line. I should have moved that to this side. Darn it. Okay, anyways, but it is square. Not that I could do anything about it now, it's glued up, but it's the same distance on the top and the bottom. So anyways, nothing I can do about it now. So the hard part now, I'm going to do the hard part first, because just get it out of the way. So I'm going to grab a chisel. And this is the one time where it may not be useful to have a super sharp chisel, but you still don't want a dull chisel, because your glue is going to mess up the edge real fast anyways. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of scraping out some of the extra glue. Probably just cut myself. Yep. See how sharp that chisel is? Just touching my thumb to it, cut it a little bit. So my chisels are still sharp. Okay, so all I'm doing is just trying to keep the chisel registered against the side, and I'm just scraping off that glue from drips. This is the most time-consuming. So I have a drip that's running down here. What I'm trying to do is just scrape off that glue line. I don't want to gouge the wood because we've got to come back through and sand off any scrapes and scratches that we made. So I'm really trying really hard not to scratch the wood. I should have been more careful. With the glue, that run really makes things awkward. Sorry, you probably can't see this. I just want to clean out that corner. And just going around, I won't show you all of this, but all I'm going to do is just go around, and wherever I see glue, I got to scrape that off. So I'm going to do that first, and then I'll come back and I'll show you what I'm going to do next. So I'll pause this and come back. Okay, so now I've got most of the glue scraped off the best I can on the inside. I'm going to go through, and wherever I can with the scraper, I'm going to scrape again. Now this I won't be able to do much, but like there's a little drip of glue that fell down there, or when I moved it, I want to scrape it off with this. I want to get as much of that glue out as possible, especially where I can see. Now down inside here, I may not be able to get very well because it's inside, but I'm going to take my sandpaper and we're going to go back through over and sand things. But I also have a spot like right here where it didn't quite marry up. correctly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the scraper and scrape that flush. So just a few scrapes will have got that there. It's almost down. The more you can do with a scraper, the less you have to do with a sandpaper. See those curls? That's what we're looking for. Okay, and I'll just do the same thing going back. You spend all that time on building it, trying to make all the joints fit nicely. You need to spend a little bit of time cleaning everything up. Don't rush this part. So you want to make sure I can't feel that groove. And I'm going to just take it on all the corners with my scraper and scrape out any of that excess glue that I have. Make sure, especially if you have a scraper that has like shapes like this, which this is not probably the proper one. I should have a square one. Make sure you don't scratch up the back, because I've done that before and that's hard to get clean. So you don't want to make any more damage. Any place you feel the glue, you want to get rid of it. The chisel just helps get most of the excess glue out, because that glue will ruin the burr real fast. So I'll come back after I've done scraping this, and then we'll start on the outside. Okay, so now we've got the inside done. What I need to do is I need to take care of these parts. This is going to be another tricky area, so we want to make sure we're nice and careful. So this time we do want to take a sharp chisel. So I'm going to resharpen this up real quick. Save your sandpaper, because we're going to use that again. We're going to go through the whole thing again. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to clean off these edges, because they've all sticking out a little bit. They're all sticking out a little bit. So I'm registering the chisel on the back, and I'm just kind of making a sawing cut. Take it nice and easy, only using a corner of my chisel. But it's got to be sharp, otherwise this won't work. When you get to the edge, watch that. Oh, and when you're clamping it in your vise, be careful that you don't push too much pressure on that. So again, I'm registering against the front. Sharp chisels, you have to have a sharp chisel for this. Because you just want to plane off just a hair. Okay, so now we have this spot here, which has quite a bit. I'm going to take my bevel down on my chisel and just chip some of that away. Always going towards the center of the thing. And I'm going to move this down in my vise a little bit if I can. Grab a scrap piece of wood real quick. Because I don't want the vise squeezing on this, on the edge here. So just putting a spacer in. There. So that way the vise, jaws of the vise isn't hitting that part. And see this crack here? There's a crack developed, that same crack that we had before. So I'm not actually going to be able to put the boiled linseed oil on today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fill that with epoxy. And then we're going to let it set, and then we're going to come back to that. So it's going to be a little bit longer. But maybe I'll do that, and I'll still try to get it all in one video today. So I want to cut this down a little bit. So anyways, basically what you're doing is you're just going to keep working these down until they're all gone. And the splitting problem isn't too bad, but I recommend hand pressure only, because you don't want to put too much strain on the box itself. It should stand up, but we've spent all that time working on it, so we want to keep it nice and easy. So it'll take a little bit of time to work all this off, but we're going to do that. So I'm going to come back after I get all the two end pieces here and the two mortises, the two rails and the mortise cut down to size. So after we get that, I will show you what I would do about this crack and the rest of the scraping. Excuse me. So, all right, talk to you later. Bye. Okay, so there's a lot of wood here that I need to take off. I'm going to show you how I do this. What I'm doing is I've got a piece of paper to keep this all off the edge, and I'm just running this back and forth and breaking stuff. But you got to make sure you try not to scratch the edge. We're gonna go back over it with a file card scraper anyways. But the less mess we make, the less work we'll have to do. But you want to separate it from the wood, so you don't want it to be. So a piece of cardboard, of paper folded over, something to help you rest the sole of the plane of the blade of the saw on. There. There, now that it's down a little bit, it's starting to work better. Alright, so I'll be back. Okay, so now we're back. We have, the epoxy's had some time to dry. So I'm going to go through with my chisel again, and I'm going to kind of scrape off some of the excess. Just like before, I'm going to hold it level with the bottom and just kind of scrape off some of this excess. Make sure that you're not digging into the wood. All you're trying to do is get off the excess epoxy. About to that level. Okay, and then and we'll be back. I'll do this, and then I will come back and show you what to do next, or what I'm doing next. All right, so see you in a little bit. Okay, so we're back. I've gotten some of the excess glue off, or epoxy off, and I'm going to go through and I'm going to scrape all the sides. And this will just clean up any kind of marks that I've left with my with the chisel when cleaning off these edges. So all I'm just trying to do is just get everything nice and smooth. So just like before, we're just hitting it with the plane. So you want to make sure we go through and we feel right where to make sure everything is nice and smooth. So I won't bore you with this because it just takes me some time. Okay, so we have the sides done. You may have to hit everything again. It doesn't. Well, we're going to work until it's right. So it may take a little bit of time to get it to that point. Okay. Now we need to clean up the fronts. I'm going to take my plane, which is sharpened, and I'm just going to kind of work my way around. If this doesn't work, I'm going to head to the scraper, which I think I might, because I don't want to ruin it. So I'm going to go through and just take off some of the epoxy. And I want to just see if I can get. I want to make sure these all are flush, nice and flush. So I'm going to take the scraper again and scrape it. I spend a lot more attention on that joint as I do anywhere else, because I want to make sure that is nice and flush right through there. So anyways, I'm going to come back through, and once I get done with this, I will come back and show you the rest. Scrapers really work nice for this because it gives a nice smooth finish, and you don't have to worry about the direction of the grain. It'll cut in both directions. You do have to redo your burr every once in a while, but it leaves a nice smooth surface. As opposed to if you did this with sandpaper, everything would be rough, and you would see them lines. So this leaves a nice pristine surface, so that when we do use a sandpaper, it just scuffs it up a little bit, so it lets the finish soak in better. If it's nice and polished like this, it's almost burnished, so it doesn't let the finish soak in very well. So I'm going to finish this. I'm going to do the same thing on the back, making sure that these edges are all smooth. I'll go through either with a chisel, like here, this one's sticking out just a little bit. I'm going to go through and I'm going to clean that off with a chisel really fast and then hit with a scraper. And I'm just focusing on the edges. We already did the middle. So once I get that, well, I'll just do the top and the bottom first right now, because that I can show you, and when we come back, we'll be ready for sanding. So again, I'm going to take my plane. This is a nice flat surface. This is the bottom, and go with the plane. I'm going to back my iron up. You just want to get all the surfaces nice and smooth. The lower you can get this in the vise, the better. It'll stop any vibration from happening. And I'm putting a spacer in there to help hold it so it doesn't hurt the edges. So I want the vise to be clamping on this board, not the little lips on the edges what stands out. So anyways, it's all basically the same. We're just going to plane everything flat. I'm just taking real micro fine shavings. I'll come back through with a scraper just to give everything a uniform shape. So once I get full shavings on this, and I am going to go full length, especially on the bottom, because I don't want it to tip. I might come back through and actually test it with my winding stick. Check it with the winding sticks just to make sure it's still not twisted. The bottom is what's sitting on, so that's why we're gotta be a little careful with this one. Okay, there's no twist, but there is a little bit of a hump in the middle. I'm going to take a few shavings right down the middle. Now just my plane's not catching anything, so it should be fine. Give a little bit deeper cut. It's right out the middle. Back it up again. Smooth it out. And I'll use the scraper then to clean everything off. Make sure there's no marks. So I won't bore you with this. I'm going to do this the same on the top, back, and sides. So when we come back, we'll hit it with a sandpaper, and we'll put the finish on. As long as everything works out with the sandpaper. So we're almost done with this, and we'll be back in a second. All right, bye. Okay, so we have this all scraped and ready to go, I hope. We'll keep the scraper close by in case we need to hit it again. But now what we're going to do is we're going to rough up the surface a little bit. So I'm going to take the sandpaper and just clean it all off. Always go with the grain. And I'm checking for any kind of feeling. Always, I want it to be nice and smooth right now. Your fingers will tell you a whole lot. So you always want to go with the grain. And as I'm doing this, I'm making sure I'm rounding over the corners just a little bit too, just to keep it from being super sharp. Doesn't take much. We're not actually trying to get rounded corners, we're just taking the irises off, the sharp edges off. So like, that was sharp, this one's sharp right now. That little bit, that's good enough. The longer you take, the more time you spend with your scraper, the better it'll be. Good. And make sure you get the inside of the box again too. Again, we're not sanding per se, we're just roughing up the surface. We're not trying to get it smooth as in like taking it down to more grits. So it leaves almost no dust. And that's what our goal is. So I'm going to finish this, so you don't have to watch all I do. Just do the same thing all over the entire box. And next time, we're going to put the finish on, the oil on to bring out the color. And that's pretty much it. We're just in the home stretch. All right, so I will pause this and come back. All right, see you. I'm not finished sanding, but I want to show you something. Can you see that little white line there? That line that's telling me that there's a scratch there, and another one up there. So what I'm going to do is, instead of spending time sanding that out, what I'm going to do is just take the scraper and just hit it a few times. And then I'll go back with my sandpaper, and that line is gone. I got a few more to do up there, but don't spend time sanding down, because remember, our goal is not to get smoothing the surface. Our goal is to rough up the surface. But the sandpaper will show you any imperfections as you go. And then you just take it with a scraper and clean it up. It looks like I've lost the bird. But anyways, that's what I'm going to do, and I'll be right back. Okay, so now we are to the end. As I was going through, I was making sure that there was no things faults that I had to fix or repair. Now I want to make sure we keep everything nice and clean. So I'm going to clean off my bench. With oil, it's not super critical, but it's good practice to get to. I'm going to take my brush too and sweep everything out. Take the corners. There's not a lot of dust. Doing it this way. But there is a little bit. So you probably should wear a mask. But I figure you guys safety is meant for, you guys decide your own safety. I'm not here to be a police. Okay. So now what we're going to do is I've got boiled linseed oil here. Excuse me. And you probably should wear gloves again. But this is the people, everybody seems to be loving this part. So I'm just putting some on my paper towel. And wipe it on. And you're going to start seeing the color show up. This is what gives walnut its pretty look, in my mind, is oil. Everything else just kind of protects it. This oil's not really super protective. I mean, it will protect some. Wipe it on, get it in all the nooks and crannies. This stuff is cheap, so don't worry about using too much. You spent all this time working on your project. You can even pour just a little bit into each little spot. And what I'll probably do, let this soak in for a little bit. I'm going to come back in a couple hours and add another coat. You guys can't see what I'm doing. All I'm doing is trying to get all the surfaces, especially the corners. That's the hardest part to get, right into those corners. I love this part. It makes everything come from gray and dingy. It just makes everything come out and shine. The nice thing about oil too, you can't mess it up. You just wipe it on, make sure you get all the surfaces. Inside is always the hardest. Try to always go with the grain. And again, you probably should wear gloves. I'll save that for a second so you can see it. Work it into all the little parts, all the little cracks. We'll do the back so you can really see. So it just makes everything come alive. Okay, so that's pretty good for the first coat. I'll come back in a little bit and wipe over it one more time. But that is the cabinet. Make sure with the paper towels that you don't let it all wrap up because this can start on fire. So you just want to keep it nice and loose. And or preferably put it into a container of water. But if you let it air out like this, you should be pretty safe. It's when it's all folded up on itself that it can create problems. So keep these nice and opened up, not wrapped up in a big ball. And then yeah, you should, because again these can start on fire. It has happened. So anyways, I will let you go and we'll come back. And again, I'll come back in about an hour or so and let this set and do another coat. And then after that, about another hour after that, I'll come back and wipe everything down. And I'm going to let it sit for about 3 days. Just so it cures nicely before I add the shellac. And we'll make sure you keep the old sandpaper. The older the better, or for in this case, because we're going to use that to do one final sanding in here, and then also when we in between the coats of the shellac. And you want worn out sandpaper. Brand new sandpaper is too rough. So this here's the spice rack. Make sure you can leave comments and get registered to win. All right, talk to you guys later. Bye.